Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer. Joining me after a brief hiatus is Professor M D Nalapat as we discuss the post scenario after the recently concluded BRICS summit. Today there is an article in CBC rather detailed saying how Modi is decidedly moving away from the West. We're going to ask Professor Nalapat if that is true and what exactly are India's compulsions. How does India get to benefit from all this stuff? Because it seems like it's China which initiated the thing. But again, these days you can never believe what one news media is saying or the other. Let's first welcome Professor Nalapat and then ask him these questions. Professor Nalapat, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel. How are you, sir?
Namaskaram, Sri. Namaskaram. I'm well, thank you.
As a wonderful Nataraja you have on the backdrop, Professor Nalapat, and beautiful. We forget that is the reason for all this existence, the cosmic dance. Professor Nalapat, BRICS summit, 16th in Kazan. We are hearing a lot of things. For example, that Xi Jinping was the one who wanted it, and that either that or Putin actually nudged Xi Jinping, saying that, look, your economy is in a mess. You want some help. You better patch up with India. What really played out in your opinion, sir?
Well, I'd like to say that the government of India was very firm that there will have to be an agreement on disengagement for any kind of a bilateral meeting between Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi. And frankly, that disengagement agreement was arrived at almost the last minute before the BRICS summit. So, yes, the bilateral did take place, and there was a discussion between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping. So, frankly, India was very clear that there had to be a disengagement. There could not be a bilateral in the absence of that, although, of course, Prime Minister Modi would have gone to BRICS, not only because it's an important grouping, but because of of the fact that we have to always keep Russia in mind when we are looking at friends, possible friends. I've always felt, Sri, that Russia is a very unnatural partner of China. And you know that I've been saying this for quite some time, years and years, in fact, that the West has pushed Russia into the embrace of China. And I think the West has made a huge strategic mistake. During the first Cold War between the USSR and the US mainly, the US very cleverly ensured that China was on its side. The Chinese very cleverly ensured that they joined hands with the West and got a lot of goodies for doing what they anyway were doing from the early 1960s onwards, which was fighting the USSR. The Mao called the USSR turncoats. He called them capitalist roaders. He called them all the most choicest epithets on earth. There was no reason to have given anything to China in exchange for helping the West out in dealing with the USSR, but that happened. In this particular situation, I think it would have made sense to do what Donald Trump, for example, has been talking about, J.D. Vance has been talking about, which is try and get Russia prized loose from the grip of China. And in that, I think, Prime Minister Modi has been quite clear that India is not going to give up its friendship with Russia for the sake of a Ukraine war, which, as you know, from the very beginning I have felt was a lost cause. And now you're seeing it's a lost cause. I mean, people in the West are acknowledging it's a lost cause. And preaching is much less. Chancellor Scholz was in India. And I mean, he mentioned, in passing, but it is a lost cause. So far as Gaza is concerned, you'll note that I think possibly on your channel as well, I made it clear that Israel has finally realized, Netanyahu has finally realized that Hamas, Hezbollah, and these Iranian proxies are existential threats. And Hamas made that clear on October 7 last year. And now Israel will have to completely eliminate the military capacities of these proxies and frankly deal with the clerical regime in Iran. But that, I think, will have to be done in a more subtle way, in a way designed for the Iranian people to basically do the job, just as the Iranian people did the job in the case of the Shah. Except that in that time, what happened was the bulk of the people turned against the Shah. They're very modern people. Unfortunately, the Khomeinis took advantage of that, took leadership of that, and then imposed their own clerical dictatorship on the rest of the country, Sree. So far as BRICS is concerned, I think the meeting went very well from India's point of view, from the BRICS point of view. You'll note that there was no negative mention of the Western world. I think it's no secret that Prime Minister Modi was very, very clear on that. And you'll notice that Pakistan is not a member. And I think you'll understand why that is the case, even though there was tremendous backing for Pakistan, especially from China.
Professor Nalapat, I want to take you back to the 1979 revolution that occurred in Iran. We'll come to BRICS in just a minute, because you triggered a thought in my mind, because our viewers may not be aware that it was not just Khomeini who triggered the revolution. There was a sizable left presence in Iran. That left presence also sided with Khomeini in bringing down the Shah. Unfortunately, after that, the first thing that the Khomeini regime did was to wipe out the left presence in Iran. So this is this ongoing battle that happened between left and Iran, left and the radical Muslims. And I think the left needs to understand that they need you to clear the path, and after that, you are the first one on the menu. Can you talk to us a little bit about what happened during that period?
Well, Sree, if you, again, pardon me, a small digression to history. You talk about the Russian Revolution, where a large number of Russians participated, and the Bolsheviks, because they were small and well organized, they took charge. Unfortunately, the Khomeinis were small but well organized, and they took charge. And frankly, Ayatollah Khomeini was very diplomatic while he was in Paris. He entertained all these Bani Sadr and other people who were anti-Shah, very moderate elements, very modern elements, and they all got the feeling that this gentleman is only interested in religion, when actually he had the concept of basically, the supreme leader running the state as a theological dictatorship. So that's exactly what happened in Iran. Khomeini played very little role, in that particular uprising. Yes, his cassettes were distributed in a lot of places, but so were the cassettes of a lot of other people, including a lot of other clerics. Somehow, the moderate people, not just the left, the moderates, even conservatives, they felt that Khomeini is a safe pair of hands to come back to Iran. And they welcomed Khomeini back to Iran. And as soon as he could settle down, he ensured that Bani Sadr government fell and was replaced by a government which was run according to his liking. And the entire nature of Iran shifted from one particular form of authoritarian rule, the Shah, to that of a second form, which is the clerical form. So that's what happened in Iran. And if you look at, for example, this axis of resistance to Israel, something which is absurd, because Israel has the right to exist. The Jewish people have a perfect right to their to be there. Well, this is not the view of the Iranian people. It's the view of the clerical authority in Iran. And I think should there be a situation where these proxies are completely decimated, I think the clerical leadership is going to look very bad, and you might find the Iranian people coming back as they came against the Shah and moving against the clerical dictatorship.
Thank you so much, Professor Nalapat. Before we go back to BRICS, one last question. I'm hearing news that Khamenei himself is quite ill now, and his second oldest son, Mujtaba Khamenei, is being propped up as a successor. So now, even in the Mulladom, you're having dynastic politics. I find it very interesting that this has become like a worldwide phenomenon now. Malays even.
Well, I doubt that that story is correct. It's possibly true that he's hiding out because the Israelis have shown their capacity in Lebanon, especially. But I don't believe that he's grooming his son for that. His son is playing an interlocutor's role, but the same way as Khomeini's family did, but they stepped aside, and Ali Khamenei came as the chosen successor, as supreme leader. So I don't think the story is accurate that the supreme leader is choosing his son and dynastic politics is playing there. But obviously, what Khamenei wants is the system to survive, and he'll try and choose somebody as hardline as he is and as absolutely set on authoritarian control of the clerical regime as he is. I don't think that he's going to try and prop up his son, because that would make him very unpopular within the clergy, Sree.
Thank you so much. Now let's pivot back to China and CCP and India, the BRICS meeting. Professor Nalapat, India made a series of moves. For example, they banned 132 software packages that used to operate out of China because they were leaking information. They were taking all the user information. And this is happening even in the United States. The funny thing is, the greatest democracy, the most powerful nation on earth, is unable to stop TikTok, whereas India has successfully done that. And that was just the start. And then a lot of foreign direct investment companies, for example, I think there was a company called Oppo, if I remember correctly. There were problems about the way they were declaring the profits that were generated in India. Basically, they were doing some, thing that they have to pay for intellectual property, and there was a company that was established in Dubai. It's essentially a front for Oppo, and the whole thing looked like they were trying to do a ruse to not pay taxes in India because you can expense something. So there are genuine intellectual property licensing, and there are others. So this has been found for 3 or 4 companies. So India kind of stopped getting FDI from China, and today India has said clearly, from what I understand, that unless you pull back to what was the positions in 2020, we are not going to deal with you on any other front. To your understanding, is this correct?
It's absolutely correct, Sree. There's no question about it. And we have some romantics who have been talking about disengagement as being the beginning of detente and all that. I mean, my view is that she had to disengage for 2 reasons. One is India has greatly strengthened its defenses all across the India-Tibet border. And we talk of Tibet, we're talking about historical Tibet, including the territories that were carved away from Tibet in 1949, 50, etc. That's the first point. Indian Air Force, Indian Navy, Indian Army, all 3 are battle ready. That's the first point. Second point is that both in the Doklam episode in 2017 and subsequently in Galwan in 2020, it was made clear that India would not blink. So I think the Chinese are now basically trying to, reassure the Indian side that they don't have any kinetic ambitions. But it's a pause. Xi Jinping hasn't pushed the stop button. He's pushed the pause button. And now he's focusing on Taiwan for a simple reason that he needs to have a huge military victory under his belt before he faces re-election. And, that particular military victory would be the taking over of de facto control of Taiwan. So he's putting a lot of energy into that. He wants to pause on the India front, and he's doing so. As far as we are concerned, we are fine. We have no aggressive intentions towards them. But yes, it's absolutely right that you cannot have a situation in which we are losing tens of billions of dollars of our money as surpluses to the Chinese exchequer. Frankly, we are in a small league compared to the Americans. But even on this, I think is not acceptable. And I think our business people need to understand that security and commerce are interlinked, and you can't separate one from the other. So when you talk about let's commerce go on and not security, let commerce go on. But for heaven's sake, make it a level playing field. You're not exporting anything to China. You're simply flooding the country with Chinese imports. I think this is something that needs to stop. And I do wish that our business interests, big business, small business, medium business, all of them will understand that and understand, frankly, that this Cold War 2.0 is a fact of life. It's going to be bigger and bigger and bigger. And finally, if they keep their bets on China, they'll have to settle down in China and be citizens of PRC, but they won't have any place in India. And I think that realization needs to come sooner rather than later. Now, why I'm saying sooner rather than later, Biden got the realization that he was unelectable rather late in the day, July of this year, leaving Kamala Harris with very little time to organize the campaign. I think, frankly, that our business community needs to wake up, smell the coffee, understand the reality of Cold War 2.0, and start shifting their reliance on China for imports and for other things. That's very important, Sree, and the sooner they do it, the better for our country, the better for the businesses that are run from India. Thank you.
Professor Nalapat, before we go to the next topic, which is this new currency that is being mooted by the BRICS community called UNIT, I have one question for you. By the way, viewers, he is a gold medalist in economics from the University of Bombay. Just so you know, he's not just an author, commentator, and editor at large, but he is also a very accomplished economist. I'm going to ask you to put that hat on just one moment. My question is, see, some of the developed states in India where they can easily pick up this Atmanirbharta, they're all actually run by opposition parties. And the opposition parties seem to think it's their birthright. In fact, they want to proudly wear that we are not going to allow any industry to flourish. The case is Tamil Nadu. For example, Sterlite. Sterlite, which was essentially doing copper smelting and purifying copper, they were forced to move everything, lock, stock, and barrel from there to Gujarat. It's a huge loss for the people there. 20 to 40,000 people lost their jobs because they can't uproot themselves from here to go to Gujarat, even though the company has gone. So, given this kind of a climate, what exactly do the India Alliance want to do? I mean, I'm just asking you to wear your political hat here. They don't seem to be, allowing Modi to even do genuine things that will help the people of India.
Sree, if the political parties don't agree on that, the voters will finally. In the case of Karnataka, quite frankly, it is a blessing in disguise that the BJP lost the election because the new government has proved itself. Certainly, in terms of performance, I think that's one of the main reasons why that the BJP got so many Lok Sabha seats from Karnataka. So quite frankly, I have always felt that grabbing, state governments is not as important as ensuring firm control of the center, because the center in the Indian system is very, very important. And from that point of view, I'd like to say that the people will make their voice heard. In Tamil Nadu, in Andhra, I've just come back from Vijayawada. Chandrababu Naidu is the chief minister there. And I'd like to say that, he's looking at running the state exceptionally well so that he remains for about 10 years and retires finally, leaving a highly developed Andhra Pradesh. He's fully in sync with Prime Minister Modi. And I think that's a very welcome thing. As far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, I think, frankly, the AIDMK, to call it a Dravidian party, may not be, it may be technically right, but may not be factually very accurate, because you had Jayalalitha, who was a Mysorean, Brahmin, and then you had MGR, who was a Malayali Nair, who ran the ADMK for a very long time. So I think Annamalai was a bit hasty, because some of us were very keen on an alliance with the ADMK and the BJP that was shot down by the state president on the ground that no, you can't trust the Dravidian parties. I think, frankly, that is a mistake. Fortunately, in Andhra, a good decision was arrived at, and I'm absolutely certain that it's the top leadership, the Prime Minister himself, who took the final call and said, yes, we will have an alliance with the TDP, because Jagannath Reddy had a lot of friends, including the BJP, and but that did not work, and the Prime Minister took the final call. So on this matter, I think Mr. Annamalai, took the call, and there was no intervention from the top. But I do feel, and I know that some very senior ministers in the Prime Minister's cabinet agree with me. I know that directly. I think we could have had a deal with the ADMK in the sense of doing a 𝗒𝘗𝘃 agreement. And by we, I mean we are talking about people of this country. The people of this country would have benefited from a vibrant Tamil Nadu. And like you now got a vibrant Andhra coming up, you could have vibrant Tamil Nadu coming up if the BJP were part of the government, or if the BJP were providing outside support. It could become a vibrant government. But I think that was not listened to. And you remember, Sree, I had said publicly, and that's a good thing about the internet. If you say something, you can be either corrected or affirmed, depending on whether you're speaking accurately or not. I had said that the intention of the anti-ABM lobby, anti-anyone but Modi lobby, was 220 seats for the BJP. BJP came very close to that, 240. Well, frankly, even in my case, I never expected such a result. I thought about 280, 300 minimum, but it came to 240. Fortunately, it did not go to a 220 mark. Otherwise, we may not have had a third term for Prime Minister Modi. And I think a third term for Prime Minister Modi is absolutely essential for the people of India. And I'm confident that he will show why in the next 4.5 years, and ensure that he gets re-elected in the next election in 2029. But I just like to point out, Sree, that politics, finally the voters decide. And the voters now, young voters especially, they want performance. They want jobs. They want output. And I've always had the feeling that we are giving a lot of fiscal incentives for machinery. Let's give fiscal incentives for employment as well. We have a depreciation program for machinery. Let's have a depreciation program for manpower abundant industries, so that manpower is encouraged. Because frankly, Sree, our huge manpower is a blessing if it's properly utilized. If it's not properly utilized, well, they have a problem, and we as a country have a problem. Sree.
Professor Nalapat, I have been covering Tamil politics quite extensively for the past 2-3 years, because PGurus Tamil is a growing channel. By the way, viewers, it's close to 1 lakh subscribers now. If you happen to understand Tamil, please do subscribe to PGurus Tamil, because we want all your support. There's a lot more emphasis on regional politics in that, as well as a view on global. Sometimes we don't even have similar programs. There are different programs, different guests, and so on. So one parting story, one parting thought I want to give to what you just said about ADMK in participation or in coalition with BJP. This is the same story like BSP and Samajwadi Party in Uttar Pradesh. In other words, followers of BSP, when they have an SP candidate in their constituency, they do vote for SP. The reverse does not happen. In the case of Tamil Nadu, it was proven. It was not like, somebody said that, okay, passionate, I want to have a nationalist party in Tamil Nadu. That's not the case. It was proven that in last 2 elections, when they were in coalition, that the BJP voter did vote for the ADMK candidate, but not vice versa. In fact, if you look at the thing, there were only 9 seats or 7 seats, I don't remember exactly, Professor Nalapat, where the BJP was in play. In play meaning that they had a realistic chance. And in every one of those things, consistently, there was a serious vote transfer that took place. We can talk about this in much more detail, Professor Nalapat, because why I say that is I'll bring in a psephologist with numbers so that I want a contrarian viewpoint. So I would love to have you back on just what ails Tamil Nadu as a topic. Let's do that.
Just 1 minute, and the country has changed a lot since the 2019 election, since the second term of Prime Minister Modi. Tamil Nadu people have also changed a lot, as you would have found out. Tamil Nadu people 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and now are very different people. And at that point in time, the election that we are talking about, that change had not fully got reflected. They will change a lot again in the next 4 or 5 years. So, Sree, no one is static. It's an evolving process. And when we use past numbers to go for present performance, the same argument is used about the TDP and the BJP. Oh, BJP will not transfer votes to us. TDP will not transfer votes to us. What happened? The transfer took place. Why? Because power is a huge magnet, Sree, and it makes all the difference of a party is in power or a party is in opposition. It's a huge magnet. The ADMK has been out of power, frankly, and when you're out of power, quite frankly, then you have a situation in which it will be a magnet. So what I want to say is that once you have an election and you're turfed out, then the lure of power is very effective. The first point. Second point is the Tamil people have changed. And Annamalai is right in one sense. There is a change in the mood of the Tamil people. There's no doubt about it. But that change is, and the change is being reflected also, if I may say so, in the regional parties as well, in terms of their approach to various issues. So that change is, I think, what needed to be considered. Things are not static, as has been said. A river flowing now is different from a river flowing 1 second later. So I would respectfully disagree with your psephologist on that, because today is an age when trends are being disrupted left, right, and center, and trends, voting trends, behavior trends, attitude trends, all that is also being disrupted very rapidly over months, weeks, sometimes even days, Sree.
Thank you so much. We'll have that discussion shortly, Professor Nalapat. And now let's move on to the unit currency. Now, the interesting thing about it is some articles have come out in the news, and there was a lot of flutter, especially in the West. I have never seen India coverage as high as in the recent past, whether it was Pannu case or the fact that India is now starting to flex its muscles in BRICS, and that there could be an alternate currency called the unit. There has been a lot of talk and critique and commentary. Suddenly, United States mainstream media is talking a lot about India and so on and so forth. Good, bad, I don't know. Let's set that thing aside. Now, the way the unit is being designed, how conformant is India's perspective on that? Because I'll give you two salient things that have come out. That the unit is going to have backing of gold assets. 40% of the value is going to be how much gold you have. The other 60% is a mix of other factors, which I don't know exactly how they are calculating it. And the whole thing is going to be on a distributed ledger, which means that you can account for, first of all, where the money flow is. Second of all, if there is a correction in one particular currency's weightage, the thing can be reflected instantly across the entire network. All good points. Where do you think India, because India has not said one way or the other. I'm curious. I want you to put on your economist hat and tell me where India will benefit if it goes along with this currency, or is India still looking for multilateral currency where it says that I want to be able to still pay for something in rupees with BRICS members, and you are welcome to give me your currency. Where do things stand now?
Well, Sree, after all this hype about this currency, it has not taken place, right? The BRICS meeting is over. Nothing has taken place. Obviously, the Russians and the Chinese will be very keen on this kind of a currency. Although about blockchain, I have my doubts for simple reason that that kind of transparency is certainly not there in the Chinese system. I'd like to say that Prime Minister Modi made it very clear that consensus has got to be the rule within BRICS. And if you have a situation by which certain countries benefit, other countries do not benefit, an unequal situation is not a good advertisement for the BRICS bloc, which is considered itself to be different from other blocs in treating people in a horizontal way, equally. So I'd like to say that yes, India is entering into currency swap deals. And you remember that years ago we had talked about the way the Obama sanctions, for example, on Iran, then the confiscation. Where are Libya's Gaddafi's assets? Where are Saddam Hussein's assets? Where are the assets of so many Iraqi Baathists, so many family members and friends of Gaddafi, so many family members and friends of other leaders who have fallen foul of the West? All that money was in accounts in the West. What has happened to them? At least the bank should explain what has happened to them. Have they, they should be transferred to the rightful owners, which are the people of these countries. They cannot be retained. But if a small portion is transferred, that's not an answer. And secondly, these huge sanctions that were imposed post-Ukraine. I remember, I think that you and I, on this channel, we discussed the impact on the dollar of these sanctions. The dollar has never been demonetized. It's one of the strengths of the dollar and what made it such a helpful unit of exchange and unit of store of value. And today, it's very unsafe for people across several geographical locations to have a dollar or a euro or a pound or even a Swiss franc. Because you never know when these countries will come together and say, oh, your country is an enemy country, and just because you're a citizen of that country or you have ethnic origin from that country. In the case of the Ukraine war, Russian oligarchs, ethnic Russian oligarchs, who are citizens of other countries, their fortunes were taken over. I don't know where that is. Frankly, the West as a safe banking destination has ceased to exist. And you're going to see the impact on the dollar, on the pound, on the Western banking system, and you're going to feel the impact over the next few years. So de-dollarization, the main reason for that, why it has been taking place faster and faster, is because it's unsafe to hold on to these currencies. Tomorrow somebody may get a feeling that somebody in authority may get a feeling that your country is a quote-unquote rogue and self-defined rogue. At one time, Gaddafi was not a rogue. Tony Blair, when he was prime minister, didn't think he was a rogue. But, subsequently, Gaddafi was considered a rogue. So we're not talking about Gaddafis here. Even a democracy like India, I think, has watched this very carefully. And India is very clear that, yes, the rupee has to go international. I would think the Americans would be well advised, if you want more Indian tourists, to have something like some UPI and the rupee payment systems. It will be a great idea. And there's a lot you can buy from India. Now you're spending $800, $900 billion buying from China. A lot of that can be outsourced from India. And if you spend 6 months or 1 year in setting up these things, you will see that it comes out very well. So I'd like to say, Sree, that de-dollarization is a fact of life. And the reason is the sanctions and the confiscation of assets without any accountability whatsoever and without, in my view, any basis in law. And we have discussed this multiple times in the past. As far as this currency is concerned, some countries would like this kind of currency, other countries will not. On the principle of unanimity, India will follow the path that is best for itself, frankly, and other countries will also similarly placed will follow the same path. So I don't believe that you're going to get that in a hurry. You'll have bilateral deals, and if you set up a group sets up some kind of a currency, which they trade among themselves in, well, every country has the option to either trade in that or not. But the role of the dollar as the central unit of exchange, as the central unit of store of value, that is definitely on its way out. And the reason is the confiscations and sanctions that have been imposed by Western countries on people. They have labeled put one label in one year and a totally different label the other year. Frankly, some of the commentary that you're seeing about Prime Minister Modi in the United States is inexplicable. Inexplicable in a country where you've got a thriving minority population, and inexplicable in a context where you've got a subcontinent where in all other countries, barring to a smaller extent Sri Lanka, the minorities are diminishing rapidly. You're seeing a genocide in Bangladesh. Who in the US media is talking about that? Who? Who talked about the 1970s?
We are.
Sorry.
We are.
Well, yes, you did, Sree. You're a lone voice, and I congratulate you for that. But you have an actual genocide taking place there, as took place in 46, 47, as took place in 70, 71. The same thing is happening here. And in Bangladesh, unfortunately, for the last 6, 7 years, this kind of genocide, not genocide, but, bad treatment of Hindus has been the norm. And now it's become open genocide. And nobody's saying anything about it in the corner of the world where you are. So where are the liberal values of Californians? Where are the liberal values of people in the US who keep preaching to other countries about human rights? What about the human rights of the Bangladeshi Hindus? Don't they exist? I mean, in my view, a human being has human rights. Every human being has human rights, irrespective of the label of faith, the label of religion, the label of citizenship, any of these, the label of ethnicity, and you're not seeing that kind of equal treatment. So quite frankly, Sree, it's unfortunate that the Western world is going through a situation by which it is still the West and the rest. And what is most worrisome about the Ukraine war is a perception that it has been created because the West sees itself still as very different from the rest. And you see from the commentary on India on the Ukraine war, we didn't take sides. We certainly didn't support Russia or Ukraine. We didn't take sides, simple. But we didn't cut off from Russia. We have downsized our defense purchases from Russia. We upscaled them from the US. And we have upscaled our energy resources from Russia. But if you look at the country that's doing the most trade with Russia, it's China. And guess which country is flooding China with its own current, with the surplus? The United States. So there is some, I'm not going to call it hypocrisy, but there is some contradiction here. Sree.
Thank you so much, Professor Nalapat. We have a few questions from our viewers for you, sir, if you don't mind taking them.
Of course.
Let's have the questions, please.
Please repeat them.
No, nothing yet, sir. Thank you, Tripuraj, for becoming YouTube member. I have not come to the questions yet. Thank you, Srinivasan. These are just acknowledgements, sir. Thank you, Toffee, for your super sticker. Balaji wants to know why unit currency was not announced by any leader like Putin, but is very subtle in the news rounds. Are BRICS afraid of the West, or are they afraid that it will fail? Unit.
The reality is that BRICS operates on the principle of consensus. That's among the reasons why Pakistan was not made a member at this BRICS meeting, although some members were pushing very actively for Pakistan to be made a member. So it's not a question of being afraid of the West. Quite frankly, after what's happened what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening inside the West, I doubt very much that there are very many people afraid of the West. I mean, in a geopolitical sense, in several parts of the world. Certainly not in India or a country like Brazil, for example. And as for this currency, I mean, if the media were always correct in its forecasts, then the Western media would have, by now, Vladimir Putin would not have been in the Kremlin, and the Russian forces would have had to retreat well beyond the internal boundaries of Russia. So I just want to say, Sree, that looking at media reports is one thing, looking at facts is another.
Next question, please. Raj wants to know, is foreign policy revolves around only the past, or current and future prospects can overturn the core of policy? Is there a policy on such policy?
Look, policies need to change with circumstances. That's very important. The West, unfortunately, on some policies, it has not changed very much. For example, the understanding that Russia would be a valuable asset to the West in its present Cold War with China. The West doesn't seem to understand what an existential threat the Chinese system poses to the West. And I don't think the tech barons in the West understand the heavy infiltration of the Sino-Wahhabi lobby into their algo warrior system, and the way in which algorithms are being created that drive up extremist rhetoric. Now look at TikTok, for example. Look at Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok. It's socially not harmful at all to the Communist Party. TikTok is deeply harmful to a democratic system because it sows great deal of doubt about democracy. It paints democratic leaders as clowns, as fools, as rogues, as knaves. I mean, and still the United States maintains TikTok. I think there needs to be a much broader level of understanding and education about these issues. And I think the Western media need to turn inwards about that and look at itself for a simple reason that this is an existential struggle. Yes, the struggle of the Soviet Union was existential. And now it's very clear from October 7, 2023, that the struggle of Israel with the so-called axis of resistance is an existential battle. And Netanyahu has appreciated that, and he's moving in that direction. But so is the current battle with China. And that needs to be understood clearly, especially by the West, because the West is in the firing line. The Chinese are looking at replacing the West, displacing the United States. And they're making no secret of it. One thing about Xi Jinping, he's very open about his goals. Until, of course, the last maybe a year or two, he's been a little more diplomatic. But otherwise, he's been very open about revealing goals, which have been the goals of the CCP from 1921 onwards, which is expansionism and basically, pushing that system all across wherever possible. So, I mean, quite frankly, Sree, I think a lot of introspection needs to be done. And if you go back to some of our old conversations, I think you'll find this reflected there. But it's very important that this be done. As far as India is concerned, as far as Prime Minister Modi is concerned, he's living in the present, not in the past, and he's living in the present to plan for the future. So he's got a plan for 2047, a clear roadmap laid out. I had the privilege of meeting Chandrababu Naidu a few days ago. He's got a plan for Andhra right up to 2047, a state-level plan. And I think that's the kind of far-seeing leadership and vision that we need at the central and state level.
Thank you so much, sir. Next question, please. Partha, thank you so much. Amidst the threat to jobs from AI, youngsters are turning to a higher computing standard. How do you see the 4-core, 6-core CPU market for Make in India?
Sorry, I need to unmute myself. I simply want to say that I don't see AI overtaking HI, human intelligence. AI, you have that old saying, garbage in, garbage out, GECO. I mean, garbage into an AI system, you get garbage out. And AI, the intuition, the sensitivity to deal with immediate challenges, you'll have to reconfigure AI for them to meet that. So anybody who relies on AI, for example, I find that creative effort is now being judged by AI machines. I mean, it's like, coming out with with a policy. Making something through a committee. Usually, the best things are made by innovators, by creative people. They're single people. They think about something, then it gets implemented. But if you have a committee to discuss it, or a commission to think about it, what comes out may not be the best, far from it. So I'd like to say I'm not worried about AI, but what I'm worried about is the overuse of AI in places where it is not should be used, and the neglect of HI, human intelligence, and very importantly, we should not neglect education. It's very important to provide primary and secondary education, higher education, and university level education. It's very important to improve all that, Sree. And if we do that, I think we can keep ahead of AI, because if AI goes ahead of us, then all of us are the losers. And after all, AI is meant to serve. AI is not meant to supplant.
Next one, please. Sanatani wants to know, is petro yuan beneficial for India as compared to petrodollar in any way? How India will not become second line of leadership in BRICS?
Look, any country that wants to trade in yuan is welcome to do so. And if the Arab countries want to trade in yuan, they have the right to do so. But as compared to petrodollar, the whole question is what will be more favorable to the country concerned. It's not a secret that Saudi Arabia, for example, has not yet joined BRICS, but is actively considering it. And it's not a secret, frankly, that this administration, of course, fortunately, President Biden, after he came to office, changed a lot, was very dismissive of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. So it's not a surprise that he's now turned away from the US and he's now going to other fields. So I'd only like to say that this is an age where India is a great power. I mean, I would be politically incorrect and say it's still the US, China, India, Russia, because of its huge resources, that are the great powers of today. Brazil as a potential great power, Indonesia as a potential great power, soon to become great powers. And frankly, great powers are to do what is best for them, and what is best for them will also be to keep the international ecosystem alive. One of the reasons why CCP has a problem, it looks at what is best for itself, even though it may be the worst for the world. And that doesn't work. Finally, it becomes negative for China itself. And this is what's happening in China today, Sree.
Next question, please. Was the planting of Younis government in Bangladesh by USA to destabilize India and China the real reason behind the India-China border resolution?
Look, the answer to both is no. Let me say very clearly that Bangladesh was destabilized not only by the USA made a lot of noise, a country that is very silent, that pretended to be very friendly to Sheikh Hasina, namely China. They played a very key role in mobilizing people on the street. And as far as the India-China border situation is concerned, Prime Minister Modi was very clear that there has to be disengagement before there are bilateral interaction. And to get the bilateral interaction going, disengagement became necessary. And from the Chinese point of view, it was not such a bad trade-off. From the Indian point of view, it is absolutely essential that you have disengagement before a bilateral. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to go into real reason or not the real reason and give blame or credit. But I would like to say that the firm answer to both is no. The US took the credit or the blame. The actual culprit or whatever is China. And as far as the India-China border resolution is concerned, in my view, there is no border resolution. None at all. And India has made it very plain that it is continuing with its curbs on FDI. It's continuing with its curbs on Chinese apps. And it's actively encouraging its industries to decouple from China. So I would say the real reason behind this there's no border resolution as such, which is why I'm saying she has pressed the pause button. Frankly, Chairman Mao was a lot wiser than she, where India is concerned. His troops entered into Arunachal and other large parts of Indian territory beyond what they already have in 𝗒𝙘𝗔 in 1962 and withdrew completely from there. Why? Because he knew that hostile India would be more harmful to China than getting the little extra territory that some people in China wanted him to grab from India would be worth. That's still the case, Sree. The territory that China is looking at taking from India is not worth the enmity of India. But I'm afraid the current Chinese government does not have the wisdom of Mao Zedong. And, should they enter, there's no question of any kind of a retreat. But the point is that Mao understood that India was so important to keep in the neutral space. Now, what is happening is India is a member of the Quad. We have signed the foundation agreements. We are now de facto working very closely with the US and the other Western countries in Japan and Australia in the military field. And the cause of that is the fact that Xi Jinping has not got the wisdom of Mao, although he says that he's, in a sense, a new avatar of Chairman Mao.
Next question, please. Neta Mafia wants to know the sudden uprising against Bangladesh president in the last 2 days after a long slump also somewhat looks like an American reaction to India-China border resolution.
I would, with all respect, I would say no, I don't think so. And it is not sudden. Sheikh Hasina made the mistake of playing with extremism, of tolerating them, of basically allowing them to grow for the last 6 years of her government. And at the same time, corruption was also high. The distribution of wealth was more and more uneven, and the public in Bangladesh were getting more and more fed up. So frankly, Hasina thought she could buy peace with these extremists. Anybody who thinks you can buy peace with extremists or buy peace with an existential threat, in the long run, you may buy a tactical peace, but never a strategic peace. I think Hasina forgot that. She thought that it was basically a strategic rapprochement. There was rapprochement on one side, her side. They waited till they were strong enough, and then they moved and took advantage of a huge mass upsurge against her, grabbed control of that, like the Khomeinis grabbed control in Iran, or the Bolsheviks grabbed control in Russia, and essentially now they're running the place for the time being. Thank you. I think not more than one, please.
This is the last question. Sorry. Maithili wants to know, is it any possibility that our UPI can somehow find a way forward in BRICS currency?
I think the UPI as a system is independent of BRICS. It's a sovereign system run from India. And I do believe UPI will someday be worldwide, and more countries adopting UPI. So I would put my focus on making UPI universal, and rather than looking at a currency over which the control of India would be very limited. UPI, the control is much more, and frankly, currency is a sensitive subject, so there has to be a certain degree of monitoring and control. But having said that, Sree, in digital currency, I would say that basing it on blockchain is a very good idea, because transparency is always a good idea where financial transactions are concerned. So basing digital currencies on blockchain would be a good idea. Whether BRICS currency, it's only if there is a currency that's satisfactory, that meets the needs of all the BRICS countries, including India, that is going to be adopted. Thank you.
Before we wind out, I just want to show one small thing. I wrote an article for Sunday Guardian many years ago about blockchain. I'm just going to show that thing. I have it mounted. 1 second. this article came about 6 years ago in Sunday Guardian. The future of cash is blockchain, and I'm glad that somewhere somehow these things are beginning to see the light of day, because I was a little disappointed, and I in fact have some patents in this, and a few more are in the pipeline, and it's just that the adoption rate has been very slow. Let's see how this plays out. Thank you so much, Professor Nalapat, and viewers, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We want good comments, good questions from you for the good professor, so that we can frame the next conversation with him based on the questions you send us. Thank you once again, sir. Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar. It's an honor to be on your show. Jai Hind.